Grouped frequency tables and histograms. Do feel free not to write out this data if you don't want, but you will need to write the answers that I'm doing. So this data shows the number of hamburgers sold each hour by a fast food store over 2 days. And quickly scanning it, we'll see that there was 1 in an hour. We've got a couple of 20s, 21, nothing higher than 20. Now when we put data into a frequency table, we're used to listing all the possible scores, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and tallying up how many of each there were. But over about a range of 10, that gets really messy. That wouldn't tell us very much. We're much better off grouping it into 0 to 5, 6 to 10, and things like that, or grouping it in some sensible way. This will let us see the pattern in the data much more easily. So when you create a grouped frequency table, now they would also like a percentage column, so we'll put that in. We'll have 3 columns here. Please use a ruler. And instead of X or score, we would usually give class or sometimes class interval. We'd still give a tally column if we need it. I think I might need one just to do this. So that will mean I need 1 extra column. If you don't need a tally column, if you're okay to just count it up, that's fine. We will have a frequency column, often just F, and we're going to have a percentage frequency. Now to choose your class groups, I'm definitely not going to do up to 10 and then up to 20 because that would give me 2 groups, and that's way too little information retained. You're usually aiming to have about a minimum of 5 classes up to a maximum of 10. If you've got fewer than 5, it means you've got too big an interval. If you've got more than 10, you've got too small an interval. So my data ranges from 1 up to at least 21. So I would say probably groups of 5. Now it's worth noting that what's usually done in your textbook is we'll say that we'll start our class at 0, and then they just put a dash of up to, and then they say now start the next one at 5, and then go up to, and now start the next one at 10. Now what that does, sorry I've moved to a ridiculously tiny pen for some reason, 0 up to, and then starting the next one at 5 is saying that it's 0 up to less than 5. And it's quite acceptable to put 0 up to less than 5, 5 up to less than 10, but it's understood if you just leave a gap, and it means you don't have to stop and think about your notation. I hope I left enough space here. 15, 20, 25. It is absolutely guaranteed that any table I do, I won't have quite enough space. So that's 10 up to, less than 15 up to. So it's quite, did I get that right? Up to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I'm not even sure if I need this one. We might discover that I didn't need it. I haven't spotted any data that's above that. So then we tally it up. So you see there's no uncertainty where the 5 should go using this method. Okay, this is getting kind of boring and I can't talk and write, so feel free to fast forward until I've done this. Sorry, if I was a really good, professional streamer type, I'd learn how to edit my videos so you didn't have to sit through this. All right, I think I got that right. And yes, I had an extra row there. So then we work out our frequency. Percentage frequency, remember if you add up the frequency column, so I totally meant to have this is our total. What have I got? 10, 20, 30, 48. And that's correct because I had over 2 days. So our frequency is, our percentage is the frequency out of the total multiplied by 100. So if we get all of these in, .58, and I'm not going to complete all of those because you just need to know how to do it. So that is our frequency, our grouped frequency table. Now making a frequency histogram, like a column graph, except the columns touch and our columns are the height given by our frequency. So our X, our score, what we were actually measuring, goes along the bottom, and our frequency needs to go up on the y-axis. So I need to go up to about 20, which says I probably want about 10 centimeters. On a grid line. And an arrow. And I've got how many groups? 5 groups. Now there's a couple of things to be aware of. If your first group started at 0, which ours does, then we start our column at 0. If we didn't start at 0, if we'd started somewhere like 20, we would leave a gap and then start our first column here. So I'm going to make my column width 1 centimeter, work on the grid lines, and the numbers at the edges of, or the numbers that start our class intervals, go on the edges of our columns. So that's 0, 5, 10, like so. What that means is that this is clearly the column that's between 0 and 5. Our frequency goes up here. We label this, and since we know what it is, number of hamburgers sold in an hour, and using our ruler, we'll make a column for each frequency. So the 0 to 5 group had a frequency of 3. Stay on the grid lines. Use your ruler. You do not colour in the columns, don't get creative. The 5 to 10 had a frequency of 7. You might find it's easier to do all the lines and then come back and do the tops, I'm not sure. The 10 to 15 group was 16. If you do find you're going to get lost with where your columns go, just do them at the right time. We don't have to save time here. 15 up was a frequency of 18. And, oh, I did have 20 to 25. What I should have done here was say that that's 20 to 24. I should have ended it. That was my bad. 20 to 24 had a group of frequency of 4. Now, just like a stem and leaf plot, this will let us talk about the shape, whether it's symmetrical or skewed. Sometimes it can be a little hard to tell. I'd say we'd possibly consider it slightly skewed, but there's also a reasonable argument for saying, look, that's actually kind of symmetrical. So this is a pretty unclear graph from the point of view of shape, but do remember, if it's really shoved up one end or the other, then you can say it's skewed. If you can say it's evenly spread out around the mean or the median, then you can say it's symmetrical. So there's a bit of an argument either way on this one. Shape isn't always something really obvious.